Since its release, Genshin Impact has seen many quality of life changes to improve the player experience. However, aren't there some features that you'd still like to see within Genshin? Well, now that we're almost halfway through 2022, it's the perfect time to discuss these new changes that we'd like to see before the end of the year. Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Johnny and welcome to another Genshin Impact video. In today's video, let's go over 5 changes that could help improve Genshin. Just to be clear as well, these changes are from my personal opinion and what I'd like to see in the near future, not changes that are confirmed. These changes will overall be beneficial for players and make their gameplay experience better. Before we do jump into it, guys, if you do like the video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. This will greatly help our channel to grow and help with the YouTube algorithm and recommend the video to other viewers. Now, without any further ado, let's jump right into it. One of the biggest changes that I think players would want is a cutscene theater. Genshin Impact is a game known for its beautiful cinematics, amazing voice acting, and incredible story. However, this can be a little problematic if players ever want to rewatch cutscenes because currently, there isn't a way to officially revisit them. Now, you guys know I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy fan. One of the games I play, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions, is a mobile game and has a similar system to what I'm describing. In War of the Visions, when you click on the menu button located at the bottom right, you'll see a story memory section that will contain cutscenes from stories, events, and even movies that you encountered throughout your playthrough. Of course, not every single cutscene can be unlocked immediately because that could spoil players in terms of story. The theater should only contain cutscenes that players have already seen and will be used to rewatch these awesome cutscenes. Technically, there is a way to experience cutscenes again, even though it's not ideal, and that's making a brand new account. But even then, that won't solve all your issues because you'll only be able to view certain ones from the Archon quest and character chapter quests. Some of my favorite cutscenes are from limited time events such as Fleeting Colors in Flight, Shadows Amidst Snowstorms, and the latest one, Zephyr of the Violet Garden, and many more. Now, these can be called fillers because it doesn't really relate to the main quest line, but there's so much character development from these events and you start to learn so much about the character's backstory that it's almost mandatory to watch them. Heck, literally one of the best battle cutscenes is from Shadows Amidst Snowstorms. Roll the clip! We can see Hoyoverse definitely puts in a lot of effort into their story and characters, so it would be a shame to not have a way for players to view them again, at least officially. Genshin already has some sort of archives for players to read dialogue again, but I do hope we get to see a sort of similar system because many games nowadays have a method for players to watch cutscenes again, and the voice acting in Genshin is one of the best, if not the best. With the story memories, or whatever you want to call it, players will be able to watch their favorite cutscenes again as many times as they want, a useful tool for any traveler. The next improvement that should be introduced, and I'm surprised it's not already, is the ability to toggle constellations on or off. Constellations are a great way to power up your characters. However, there are certain constellations that can have a negative impact depending on your playstyle. For example, Bennett. Bennett is an incredible character that can fit into any team because of its amazing buffs and healing capabilities. But there is one constellation that could ruin your Bennett and possibly your account, and we all know what that constellation is. Constellation 6, Fire Adventures with Me. With this constellation, it absolutely does, Bennett. Because with this constellation, it will infuse characters inside Bennett's burst with Pyro, which is his main source of utility. This is great if you're trying to build a Pyro team, but will limit you to this element, which is why players do not generally activate this constellation, despite having access to C6. If you're trying to build a physical team, let's say Razor, then Bennett at C6 might not be ideal unless you want to turn Razor into Diluc. New players could fall victim to this because for the most part, you generally want to activate every single constellation you receive. Many players have made this mistake with their Bennett and currently it's irreversible. The best way to fix this issue is to allow players to toggle constellations on or off. What this means is that players can toggle on a certain constellation and it would activate up to that specific one. So if you accidentally activate C6, you just toggle on C5 and then C6 would be deactivated. This would allow players to experiment and use Bennett to his fullest potential as well, if they have all of his constellations. Now personally, I don't have C6 Bennett, and even if I did, I would not be activating it because of the limitations it brings, unless I can toggle it on or off. Which really sucks because it feels like a waste of a constellation, and if we were able to toggle it on or off, then I would love to use C6 Bennett to build a Pyro team. While currently the issue is mainly with C6 Bennett, there could be future characters that might have this issue as well, or maybe players that want to deactivate their constellations for more of a challenge, so this would be a huge improvement for Genshin. An important feature that could help improve players' combat experience are buff timers. As it stands, Genshin is a game that revolves around rotating characters with different types of abilities and cooldowns. On top of it, there are also buffs from other characters and even weapons that players have to manage. This could get very confusing and chaotic, especially inside the Spiral Abyss, which is why buff timers would be ideal for managing your buffs. But how would this system be useful? Take Chongyun for example. Chongyun has an elemental skill that infuses the character inside it. Technically speaking, it does have a duration for the infusion of 2.8 seconds at talent level 9, but because you're most likely inside it majority of the time, it'll keep refreshing so it doesn't appear like it has a low duration. If you look closely though, you can see your weapon is infused with Cairo, even after his elemental skill ends. The issue is knowing when it ends though, because you're not going to be looking at your weapon to see if it's still infused when you're trying to dodge and manage other cooldowns. There are also lots of explosions and special effects going on around the map that'll make it harder to see if the weapon is still blue. Oi! Ow. Oh! With the inclusion of buff timers, players could see that active buffs, whether it's a duration timer or any type of indicator, it would show all active buffs that enhances the characters, which includes characters and weapons. This small feature could make a difference between clearing the Spiral Abyss with 36 stars or 35. It'll also help to maximize on their damage because they'll be able to spot their buffs instead of blindly guessing, which is something we already do for cooldowns. Remember those times when you entered the Spiral Abyss or took on some weekly bosses just to figure out that you don't have any artifacts on? Now, I'm sure this has happened to many players who have a bunch of characters to manage, including myself, but something I think that would help with this issue is making artifacts separate per party. Now let me explain what I mean by this. With the current system, all characters share artifacts, whether they're in a different party or not. This makes it so players generally have to swap artifacts around depending on the character they want to play, and can be misplaced or forgotten due to switching. The method is totally understandable as well because it's supposed to limit the same artifacts from being used across different characters at the same time. But that's the key phrase though, is at the same time. If artifacts were separate per party, you still avoid the issue of the same artifacts being used across different characters because you can't use two parties at the same time anyway. What the system would only do is make it convenient for artifacts to be on different characters depending on who you have it equipped on between party 1 to 4. For example, I have my physical DPS Queen Eula as one of my main damage dealers equipped with 2-piece Bloodstain and 2-piece Pale Flame. However, Razor is one of my favorite characters that I enjoy playing casually, so I generally find my physical damage dealers fighting for the same artifacts. With the new system, I wouldn't run into the issue of Eula and Razor having to share artifacts because they'll be in different parties. Eula will be in party 1 with 2-piece Bloodstain and 2-piece Pale Flame, while Razor will be in party 2 with the exact same sets, making it so I can switch between parties and have both characters equip the same artifacts without having to manually switch them myself. My 2-piece Bloodstain would basically be dedicated to Eula in party 1 and dedicated to Razor in party 2. The exact same can technically be said about weapons as well. Again, this won't pose a threat of overusing artifacts because you can't use two parties at the same time, making it so each artifact will be equipable once per party and allow players to have an easier time managing artifacts. Now last but not least is the one that I'd be very excited about because this will help with testing damage or comparing builds consistently, and it's a training dummy. Currently, with Genshin, the best way to test damage is to generally go to a weekly boss or a world boss. You can go to the Spiral Abyss for testing, but because of the buffs from each chamber and the Abyssal Moon, it can be challenging to test there. Each chamber is also generally different, and if you want to try testing on a single target, then that could be difficult. Weekly and world bosses are more accessible because players can go there directly. Because of their higher HP pool than the average enemy, they can withstand more damage as well, but are still limited to their own max HP. Bosses will also actively engage the player and constantly move around, which could be a little frustrating because you'll have to dodge or chase them. Not to mention, some of them also have janky hitboxes. Genshin Impact offers a housing system inside the Serenity Pod where players can be creative and build their own unique place. This sets up the Serenity Pod to be a perfect training ground for players to do their own testing on a training dummy. Unlike bosses who move around aggressively and have a limited amount of HP, the training dummy will be immobile and will have an unlimited amount of HP for all player types to test, whether you're F2P, small spender, or a large spender. Because of its unlimited HP, we also avoid the issue of worrying about respawn timers or even going through loading screens and cutscenes. In some sense, there's already a training dummy as well located near Ellen. While it might not be visible unless you have the commission called Ellen, the Wannabe Knight, it's still within the game and will be a very cool feature to see so players can practice on an immobile target with no resistances. And hey, if players prefer testing on bosses with resistances, then that option will always be there as well. There are definitely other changes that I would like to see within Genshin Impact, but I think the 5 changes mentioned are crucial to further improve the player experience. Let me know what you guys think about these 5 changes and which one you'd be excited for most if they were to be implemented, or what other changes you'd like to see that weren't mentioned. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, so do tell in the comment section below. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to also turn that notification bell so you don't miss on any newly released videos. I've been Johnny D, and until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next one.